at once, so
No.
we'll get there.
Crazy times for sure.
So Roxanne, do you think we should use Q&A? Somebody's asking.
I think we could just do the questions in the chat, or would you rather use Q&A?
I don't care. It's just if they're all in the Q&A, the questions, then it doesn't, you know. Yeah, why don't we go ahead and use, it doesn't get jumbled up. Why don't you guys, you go ahead and use Q&A, and it's down in the menu bar below the. We
should probably go over this in a minute or two because it's not quite 5 o'clock yet, and then we don't have to keep repeating ourselves.
Okay.
And I'm good right till 6, and I've got another one at 6, so I've got a hard stop.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. And we really appreciate, I know that what you've got going on must be insane.
Lots happening.
Huh?
Lots happening for sure.
Yeah. So
we've got about 50 people.
56.
Well, that's counting us, I think, but but we count. So, and we had how many registered?
80.
80. So we'll wait another minute just to give people a chance to get on. And then we'll get started.
Yeah, I don't want to wait too long because we've got
lots
lots to talk about, and the senator has a hard stop, and so do we.
All right. Well, you want to go ahead and start?
Yeah. Okay. Welcome, everybody. For those who don't know us, I'm Paul Gibson, the co-founder of Retake Our Democracy.
And I'm Roxanne Barber. I'm the other co-founder.
And we've got 4 other members of Retake Our Democracy and constituents of Senator Wirth who are going to ask a bunch of questions. And then when we're done with those questions, sort of like we do in the Zoominar webinars, we will open it up to Q&A. And to do Q&A, go to the menu bar at the bottom, and you'll see this clever little indicator, Q&A, and you click on that and you can type in your questions there. And then you can also just chat if you want to make comments and stuff like that in the chat room.
Right, but we won't be taking questions from the chat room. Usually there's a lot of conversation going on in the chat, so it just gets a little too difficult to filter through that and find the questions. Q&A at your bottom menu bar, as Paul said. If you don't see your menu bar, just hover your cursor down there and it should pop up. And I want to just say too, maybe wait a bit before you start posting your questions, because often what happens is your question is going to get answered in the questions that we're going to ask. So anyway, just a request to maybe wait a few, at least, 15, 20 minutes, and we'll get through our questions. And then if you still have a question, put them in there. We may not have time to get to a lot of them. That often happens, and we apologize for that, but
do the best we can.
What we were thinking, we would maybe
forward the questions to the senator,
who's extremely busy, but maybe
I also, the way I've always done this, I have email, and folks, that's how, if people email me a question, I do read my emails. You may get some responses at weird hours in the morning or late at night, but I really do try and respond.
Okay, well, maybe that's a better way to do that then. If we don't get you to your question today, just email Senator Wirth and he'll be getting back to you.
Okay, so we got 73 people on there. I think that's probably good enough to get started. And so the first question we want to ask,
let's go around really quickly and have people introduce themselves. Just take,
Elizabeth,
20,
how about if you introduce yourself?
20 seconds or so.
Okay, I'm actually a member of Spark. So I've traveled around the state with the State Platform Committee and kind of heard a lot of people's concerns. And we made a real effort to be outside of the cities this time, to really go to rural areas, because people in rural areas feel ignored.
And that's Platform and Resolution Committee of the Democratic Party, right?
Party, yeah.
Okay.
And I'm also a small business owner. My husband and I own Books of Interest in Santa Fe. And I'm involved in many, many political groups and just trying to hope that we can move in a better direction and stop being afraid of words like socialism and do what's right no matter what somebody calls us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Paul Durdak.
Senator, I'm Paul. We've met. I think I put most of my effort into the administration and mechanics of electoral campaigns for candidates. I never want to see a good Democrat lose an election for maladministration in the campaign ever again. And so that's where you see me.
Okay. Heather? You're muted, Heather. We'll go over to Melissa while you figure out your sound.
Hello, everyone. Senator Wirth, hello. I can attest that you do answer your emails. I'm very appreciative of that. It's really terrific. Kudos. I'm a constituent, and I also am involved in working on the public bank project.
Great.
Thank you.
And if Heather can't find her sound, try again. Say something. Nope, can't
No.
hear you.
Can you hear me?
Oh,
There we
yeah,
go.
you just got to lean
Okay, I just
forward.
need to be closer. Okay. My name's Heather Carlson. I was involved for a few years with the Global Warming Express, and I may have met you then, Senator Wirth, working on that. And I also do a lot of work on climate change issues. I manage a website and send out an email newsletter called New Mexico Climate Action on a lot of the climate events and issues that are happening.
Okay, great. Well, you get to go first, Heather. So you're going to, and appropriately enough, we're going to ask the senators some questions about some environmental bills.
So Retake has a number of environmental bills that we're supporting. This question focuses on 4 of them: local choice energy, community solar, the Green Amendment, and the fracking moratorium. Which of these do you support? Which do you think has the greatest support in your caucus? And are there any in particular that might benefit from focused advocacy?
So good question. And I want to state right up front that I haven't read all these bills. And again, I certainly understand the concepts, but please, I want everyone to understand kind of what my role is as the majority leader. Because again, we've got loads of bills coming in, and I look forward to getting into committee and being able to hear the testimony and read all the bills and be in a position to get back to the kind of a more micro level. Right now, literally, we are trying to launch this ship and get us through opening day and then, into a virtual session. And so again, I've not been sitting reading all the pre-filed bills, and I want to just everyone to understand that. And if there's a whole bunch of specific questions about details like that, I'm probably going to default because I think it's important to obviously understand what's being discussed. Local choice energy is certainly something I support in concept, and that bill's been around before. And so again, that's one that we'll watch it move through the process. I also support in concept the Green Amendment, which is new. We've not had that. For all the folks that are watching, Sally Rogers, who many of you may know, who's an environmental champion, really started Conservation Voters years and years ago, was able to put some language in the Constitution talking about the importance of the environment, but it's language that didn't have enough teeth. And so the other thing I will say about the Green Amendment is that it really needs to be discussed hand in hand with the Civil Rights Act that Speaker Egoff is really pushing, because that's the mechanism that's going to give you the right to bring a state action based on the New Mexico Constitution. And just in many events talking about this, without that bill, we have a whole string of rights in our Constitution where there's not a remedy. And so again, I think this is a good discussion. And just so everyone understands, we're not passing, if we vote for the joint resolution, that sends it to the voters, and then it's for all of us. Then it switches the the ball into that court. And so I certainly do support sending that to the voters. And again, I want to look at the language. I have seen the drafts of that bill. So what else do we have? We have community solar. So Paul Gibson sat in the committee room in 2019 in one of the more epic hearings that's probably happened in my 16 years in the legislature on the community solar bill that was being presented that year. And, you know, there was an effort to kind of derail that and use various techniques to not let that bill go through Senate conservation. And I think, you know, Paul, I think we were in there for 4 hours, maybe 5 hours. I mean, I'm the floor leader, and the floor was going. And I think the hope was I was going to leave. I didn't leave because I really believe so strongly as I've carried the bill. You know, I think the second year it came in, Senator Souls introduced it the first time, and we had 2 votes in Senate conservation, his and mine. And then Cisneros carried it 1 year and dropped it, and I picked it back up. It's something that we just have to get over the kind of the retail wheeling argument that gets played, that somehow this is the end of the world. And I think back to and I'll tell a few stories here. When I first chaired Senate Conservation, Senator Bingaman had just finished serving his term, and it was 2013. And he was a good friend. I had interned for him years ago, and he came to the Senate Conservation Committee, and he had just been out at Stanford talking about various energy issues that should be bipartisan, and top of the list was community solar. And so we've really been trying to do this since then. Again, the details are important, so we got to look at what that looks like. So I think that is an important discussion for sure. With respect to a fracking moratorium, again, I think we'll see what the bill looks like. I certainly, we're in a challenging spot because we're sitting on the doorstep of a legislative session where, thankfully, we're not going to be cutting education, but everyone needs to understand the reason we're not cutting education is because oil and gas has come back faster than anyone thought. We were looking at $1 billion shortfall in June, and that would have just been brutal. So I just think that we have to, all focus needs to be on diversification and transition, and we're in that. And this is a discussion that needs to be had. Again, I'll take a look at what the bill is. Generally, at this point, I think, what that time period is important. I think we are in transition, and at some point we have to get away from this being the 35% of our state budget. And so I'm there in terms of the transition. I think if it's a moratorium, we're going to stop in 2 years. I probably wouldn't vote for that because I don't think that's realistic. This bill sends a message, but I just think it's important to understand kind of we need to move that direction, but we've got to focus on renewables. We've got to focus on recreational cannabis, one of our big issues. We've just got to keep pushing to diversify to get there. So that's kind of my thoughts at this point. And again, I haven't seen the bill. I don't know if is it a 30-year, we're going to do this over a period of time. I don't know. Is it tomorrow? I mean, all those things are discussions that are important, but we need to have the discussion. I think there's no question. And it's the kids, it's what it's all about here. And we're going to be long gone. So it's absolutely frightening. So the great thing, let me say one more thing up front that everyone needs to know. We have an amazing new state Senate. I mean, for the first time, there's a number of issues where the votes are there in the Senate and maybe not in the House. So you're going to hear real passionate advocacy for the environment. And I think that's fantastic.
Okay, well, thank you, Senator.
And I want to say, we totally understand not having seen any of these bills, or almost none of them. We're asking about concepts in general. And of course, the language in the bill, makes all the difference. So yeah, general concepts.
All right, so the next question is going to be from Melissa, and she's going to be asking about the State Public Bank.
But
You're
you're
muted.
I think that's the mantra of the last, of the COVID session. You're muted.
Yep.
That was one of the top 10 phrases for 2020. You're muted.
You saw that, yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. A state public bank could be a real driver of our efforts to expand and diversify our state economy. One sector influenced by large banks and opposed to public banking is the community bank lobby. But community banks would actually benefit from a public bank. The credit unions, for example, fully support public banking. 3-part question. Do you support creating a state public bank? What is the level of support among the Democratic Senate caucus? And how would you advise advocates to best counter the community bank lobbying effort? Thank you.
Yeah, and I do certainly support the concept of a public bank. We've had this, I think Speaker Egoff in his very first year in the House, almost got a bill across the line on this issue. And then it's been, he's done different versions, and he has some pretty, strong feelings about what needs to happen with it. I think the community bank issue is something we have to address for sure. And I don't think you're going to find a whole bunch of legislators that want to go shut down all the community banks, who do a lot of really good things that these huge, big, Wells Fargo and Bank of America don't. And so finding that the right point there is important. Last year, a memorial was introduced on the public bank, and it couldn't get past its first committee in the Senate. So this is where I just think everyone needs to really appreciate kind of how far we've come, how fast. And so I think the key thing is going to be, and again, I haven't seen the Senator Steinborn's bill yet, and maybe he's pre-filed it. He may have. I just haven't. That's my weekend project, is to go through all those bills and get them ready to go and get introduced. But I think a lot of this is going to be, it's going to have to be shaped in such a way that it's not rolling all the community banks. And so I think that is going to be key. And again, like I said, last year it was a memorial to study it, and it failed in the Senate Rules Committee. I think you will see a very different Senate Rules Committee. And again, the bill probably won't go to the Senate Rules Committee if it's a bill. Memorials go to the Rules Committee. So that's a whole nother, it'll have a different path. So I thought Brother Doug, as I'll always call him, who wrote the column in the New Mexican, I thought that was awesome. And I know him from his teaching days before he moved over into the financial sphere that he's in, but I think he really nailed what can happen if this is done right. And how we do it, and whether it's a certain segment that's targeted, and all those kinds of questions are all the pieces that come in, when you kind of put something together. So again, whether it'll go all the way through, I honestly, I can't kind of give you a prediction on that, other than I'm just going to say it's a very different roadmap in our chamber than it's ever been. And I just, this is exciting. And I should premise by saying something I think I said in the town hall we did with the leadership with all of you. When you get a window like this, you have to go. And so I just want you all to know that, I sometimes get criticized because, again, I was dealing with a very challenging caucus, and there were only certain things we could do. And it took every ounce of everything I had to get gun safety bills to 22 votes and things of that nature. Things have really changed. And so we really do have a phenomenal new set of folks coming in. Thanks to all of you. And again, everyone worked really hard on those elections. And I also should say, I very much appreciate, all of Senate District 25 coming together and giving me the chance to be in this position.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Melissa, I just wanted to tell you, a couple of people typed in the chat that your screen was like bobbing up and down. I don't know whether you were typing or something was bobbing up and down, and yeah, okay, you were writing. All right. Okay, next question is going to be asked by Paul Durdak. Go ahead.
Yes, indeed. Again, these are two topics, and we appreciate and understand your earlier comment about this is a high-level discussion, and none of us have read the text. But these two pertain to the legislative bodies themselves. The first is about redistricting. It's a bill to bypass the creating a constitutional amendment to deal with redistricting, but create a 7-member bipartisan committee to develop 5 different options for redrawing districts, with the legislators unable to amend those options, but able to choose among them. That's one. And then there's another in the same general topical area, a bill from Senator Ivy Soto that would create a constitutional amendment to authorize the Ethics Commission to establish salaries for legislators, judges, and other state officials. Once again, are you sympathetic to these ideas? Do you have a sense of the level of support in the caucus? And finally, do you have advice to us as advocates about
So
them?
let's start with the second one first.
Okay.
And I absolutely, now whether it's the Ethics Commission that's the right place to set salaries, I don't know. But I will tell you, we almost got this across the line. We had the votes in the Senate Finance Committee to send this to the voters in 2019. And unfortunately, there was just some relatively new lawmakers that went into Senate rules, and Senator Ivy Soto changed a whole bunch of things they didn't like. And then they took the bill that had passed the House, the joint resolution, into Senate Finance and tried to strip a bunch of amendments from another committee, which you just don't do it that way. And so Senator Smith didn't move forward, but he supported, getting something to the voters so that legislators could get paid. We've had this discussion for a long time. I think it is long overdue. And again, it would mean a much more diverse group of folks that could serve. And I really think that it needs to be presented to the voters in a way that they understand. And so I think the idea of creating a commission, which Ivy Soto's kind of come up with, is a way that it might get passed, and that's important. So I fully support that, and I know he's talked to me about the Ethics Commission. I'm not sure that Jeremy Ferris is too thrilled about this idea, but that's part of the challenge, is what it would look like. And the thing with the constitutional amendment, it doesn't have to go into all the details. It just has to change the Constitution, and then we do it through an enabling clause. So that one, I think, I really do hope we can. Doesn't need to go to the governor. It's just a joint resolution. Needs 50% in each chamber. Redistricting commission is going to be challenging just because of the timing. We're there. We're in this, and I would, when the United States Supreme Court punted on political gerrymandering, that was tragic, because the reality is every state should be set up in such a way that the process is done so that you have equal districts and it's fair. But we all know that's not the case. And there are just horror stories as a result of this. And look at Wisconsin. Elects Joe Biden, you got a Democratic governor, and you got this nightmare set up in the state legislature. So again, I think there's been a lot of discussion about this. It's going to have a bipartisan sponsors, and I think Senator Ortiz-Pino and Senator Moores, both members of the Rules Committee. And so there will be a robust discussion. I do believe the legislature should be involved. I'm not sure that I agree that it should just be an up or down vote. And the states have done it in different ways. So again, I want to look at it. I want to think about it. I've been through this once. And so I have seen kind of what it's about, and it's really challenging to have politics mixed into this decision, and obviously it's not. Remember, we redistrict all kinds of. I mean, congressional is the big one, and then all the legislative seats. We used to do the PRC. We won't do that anymore, but the PEC gets redistricted, and so it's big process. I'm willing to look at it, but I'm realistic that the timing we're in. I mean, we're going to have a bill on redistricting in this session to kind of set some of the framework for doing it. There will be a briefing also the day before the session to the Legislative Council from lawyers and Brian Sanderoff, who will be doing a lot of the demographics part of it. One thing I will say that really is important is that, and I think there needs to be public input and public participation. I know Senator Tizipino and Senator Moore's, I've watched their presentation to retake on this issue. I don't completely agree with what they said, that this was a sham. And I'll just give you an example. The redistricting plan that was set up for Senate District 25 had me losing all of El Dorado to Senator Griego. And when that plan was floated during those hearings, I assure you, my good friends, and hope there's lots of folks in El Dorado, made it loud and clear that they did not want Senator Griego representing El Dorado. And I think that was testimony that actually was really important in shaping that and making sure that Senate District 25 kind of stayed the way it was. So lots to be discussed on that one. But again, I think I want to see it and we'll move forward.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks. And Elizabeth's going to ask the next question. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Hi. The pandemic has revealed the deep flaws in our employer-based health insurance system, and healthcare costs are spiraling out of control and incomes are stagnating. And despite 3 studies that show HSA would save New Mexico money, legislators continue to say they need a better understanding of costs. Anticipating this, the Health Security for New Mexicans campaign crafted the bill to be implemented in stages. And the first stage is forming an independent board to work through the details of how it will be implemented and to get very specific about costs. With this information, hopefully the legislature will feel more confident. Do members of your caucus generally understand the bill? What more do you think we can do to get it passed? And do you think this is the year it will happen?
So a couple of things about Health Security Act. It's been around a long time. So my predecessor in the legislature, Max Paul, and Lucky Varela, this was their effort to do a single payer plan, and they pushed it. And I've always voted for it because I really do think that it's something that needs to happen. Now, I was discouraged to hear in some other forum from Senator Stefanix, who sits on the Health and Human Services Committee, that Senator Tizipino made the decision not to endorse this bill because it was too expensive. And so I'm just gonna be honest. You all need to understand that that was surprising to me. I was not aware of that, but Senator Stefanix laid that out and said, wait a minute, the concept, but this version, there was concerns about cost. And I encourage all of you to go back and find out some more information about exactly what that looked like in terms of that. And you can probably go watch it all. It's all online. So you don't need to call Senator Stefanix, just go watch Senator Tizipino's hearing, because the bill was not endorsed as a committee bill by Health and Human Services. That's what I heard from Senator Stefanix. So I'm curious about that. Again, I haven't gotten into, if the bill's even been pre-filed. I haven't looked yet at the Senate pre-files and House pre-files. But Elizabeth, let me just say, what you're describing though, in terms of a staged process, I think is important, because I really do think that gives the time and look, we were able to get the money to really look at the study on this, and that was a good step. That wasn't easy to do either, but it's one of those things that this is it's a big lift, it's an important lift, and it's an important discussion that needs to happen. And so, can I tell you what's going to happen? I really don't know. I honestly don't know, but it does. being straight up, when I heard from Senator Stefanik that there were those concerns flagged by two champions, that did cause me to go, okay, wait a minute, we need to look at what's going on with this bill. So I just think this is one that we need to get it introduced, get it into the process, and see exactly kind of what the analysis is, what the fiscal impact is. Because again, just know we're still in even though we're kind of treading water, and our recovery, they're calling, instead of an L-shaped recovery, it's a Nike swoosh, which I like because it's happening much faster. But if it's millions and millions of dollars to pay for it, and it's a recurring cost, the question then becomes, where does that money come from? I've got some good ideas. If someone wants to talk about tax policy, that's a whole nother discussion. But part of diversifying is you've got to find the revenues to pay for it, because it can't come out of the schools. And we just have to be careful. We don't want to be using one-time oil and gas money. That's the disaster. And so those are the big discussions on the fiscal side that you're going to have. So just some thoughts, but I also probably need to go back and check in with Senator Ortiz-Pino and Senator Stefanik to find out more about that, because I was not, that was something she offered in response to a question on one of these town halls as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That is surprising. And I guess the folks at Health Security for New Mexicans would probably really want to hear that. And I'm sure they're going to be in touch with Senator Ortiz-Pino.
And I encourage them. The first thing I did as majority leader, the very first thing was to have archiving of all the Senate committees. So it's real simple. Just go back and you just look at the December meeting of Health and Human Services and go watch it. Don't take it from me. It's all hearsay from me, but just watch it and see what it is. But I think understanding those discussions and that interim is really, really important to get a feel for what it's going to look like coming in.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And I just had a quick question. Did you say that both Senator Stefanik and Senator Ortiz-Pino had problems with the price, or was it Stefanik?
Yeah, I want to be real careful because I don't want problems with it. I don't want to say that because I think they're supportive. It's just that, and it may have been with the League of Women Voters. Senator Stefanik just highlighted that it didn't get endorsed by the interim committee, and I want to be careful not to go send a bunch of alarms going off everywhere, because again, we've been doing so many of these. I really encourage everyone to go back and listen to it, because it's all there. So
Okay.
So we don't need to try and figure it out what happened, because it's all right there. And maybe I got it wrong, but I don't think so. I was pretty surprised by that.
Okay, thank you.
So it's my turn to ask a question, and this one's about the private prison moratorium. And this bill has been filed. It's HB 40 on the House side, obviously. It's the private detention center moratorium, and it would prohibit the state from not just renewing contracts, but also from entering into any new contracts with private prison operations. And, most of us know that New Mexico has the highest proportion of inmates incarcerated in private prisons in the nation, in terms of our percentage of our population. The bill's sponsors and a group that's working on this called People Over Private Prisons have put together a really good summary that makes it clear that transitioning back, I guess, because we used to have just state-run state-run prisons, is not going to cost New Mexico jobs, and it will save the state money while improving conditions for thousands of inmates in our state. Do you, in concept, support this legislation, and do you think there's support for it in the Senate caucus? And what might be some of the biggest oppositions to it?
So I do support it and feel strongly about it. I mean, this is one of Gary Johnson's horrible legacies, was a transition to privatization of an essential government function. And, I have traveled back in the days when we could actually travel around the state on interim committees, on the Courts Corrections Committee, which I chaired at one point, travel to the various different facilities. And it's just, you end up with a situation where categorization of inmates, they're being categorized as level 3 because that's what the contract says. You've got folks that are stuck down in Hobbs that have families, from Albuquerque and Farmington, and they're being shipped down there because that's where the contract is, and they're categorized as level 3. Maybe they could get out. I just think this is, and then we get ICE mixed into this. I mean, the Cibola situation, there's an argument, there's an economic development argument, and unfortunately, private prisons were used for economic development. The Clayton prison, that was the reason it was built there. But I feel very strongly about this. And, one of the responses has been that our facilities, our state-run facilities are falling apart because we haven't invested in them the way we should. My response to that is then, well, let's go buy the private prison and turn it into a state facility. Then the facility's there. And the other thing I want everyone to know, I think that is, we sat in New Mexico for 8 years under Governor Martinez, with every single bill was lock people up and crime, all the time, penalties. And meanwhile, Texas and Utah, they're closing prisons because the fiscal conservatives have realized that you can spend half the money to get these folks into treatment and rehabilitated versus locking them up. And so the privatization is a disincentive to do that because we're stuck in these contracts. So what's the opposition going to be? It's all about money. It's the cost, and it's trying to figure out how we do the transition. But I've met with a variety of different groups working on this. ACLU also, they may be part of the one you referenced, Roxanne, but I think this is the best chance for actual movement on this issue since I've been in the legislature. So stay tuned.
Oh, great. That's good to hear. So Paul's going to ask the next question, and then we're going to try to get to some of the Q&A questions. Just want to let people know that.
And we have Miranda Viscoli on the Zoom, and so we're going to give her the first question outside of us on the screen. And she's with New Mexicans for Gun Violence Prevention. My question is, you were champing at the bit to talk about tax reform and tax generation, so I'm going to give you a chance. We asked this question of Speaker Egolf, and I'm sure you're very familiar with the various options for increasing revenue and closing loopholes, and basically going back to 2003 and undoing all of some bad decisions. And I'm sure you're familiar, there's a good checklist of what our options are on New Mexico Voices for Children that could generate, you were talking about being $1 billion in the hole possibly before gas and oil started to bump back up. But their list would generate $1 billion a year. So where do you stand on that? And not just one thing that's definitely true and which you commented on is that the Senate is different and the Senate Finance Committee is going to be different. And so there may be the chance to do something really substantial here. What is your view on that?
So yeah, and let me give you a little, I think it's fair for me to share this with you. So there's going to, Senator Stewart's putting together all the committees, and there's going to be the Senate Corporations Committee is going to be no more. It's going to be the tax, business, it's going to be tax, business, and transportation. And so we are creating a tax committee specifically so that we can have a committee where these, like the House has got a tax committee, where these bills can go and not just go to be held until they get released to Senate Finance, but where they can go and have hearings, and then we can put together a kind of an omnibus package. One thing I just want to say that's important with tax reform, the gross receipts tax is a huge piece of our revenue base, and after 50 years of carving away, getting exemptions, the base has become very narrow and the rate is really high. And it's gotten to the point where, businesses come to New Mexico and the first thing they got to do is try and get a lobbyist to go get their gross receipts tax exemption. which is just a disaster. And so, you know, we've carved away at this for so long, and we need to broaden the base and lower the rates. And we need to get rid of some of the pyramiding that's in the gross receipt system, because it's a very unique tax for New Mexico. It's not a sales tax, it's on goods and services. I charge it at my law firm. And because we're the envy of many states, because we have the ability to do that, it's just it's been abused. It's been used as the only revenue stream. And local governments, I mean, here in the city, that's their primary revenue stream, is the GRTs. So here's the challenge, and I'm just going to throw it out, Paul. So and for everyone to hear, to reduce the gross receipts tax by 0.25% is $160 million. So, you know, we're talking about recreational cannabis being a $600 to $800 million industry in the first year, taxed at 15 to 20%. That brings in about 150 million bucks. Well, that would lower the GRT by 0.25%. That's how bad it's gotten. And so I think what needs to happen is that you need to have, and let me just say, this is the most regressive, you know, for lower income folks. It's just incredibly regressive. And so this is part of good tax policy, and part of what I know, you know, voices also would want. And so the question becomes, how do we put a package together that can do that? I mean, there's some low-hanging fruit. There's a capital gains exemption that was in the Richardson administration that can go away. I'm going to carry a bill dealing with a corporate tax, which, just so everyone knows, it's not the New Mexico small businesses. They're all subchapter S or LLCs. They're pass through. They pay on their personal income tax return. These are the C corporations who, by the way, many of them, the big box stores, they've been doing darn well during this pandemic. And we made a decision in 2013 that, you know, that very controversial bill, the Breaking Bad bill, it was called, because it saved the movie industry, but it had this huge corporate tax component to it. And, you know, the small reduction in rates that happened then have been just overshadowed by what happened at the federal level in 2017. These corporations got a massive tax reduction, you know, by the Trump administration. And so it sure seems to me that we need to put that into the mix. So you're going to see that. You're going to see a variety of bills on putting progressivity back into the personal income tax. And again, so stay tuned. We had a diverse working group in our caucus talking about taxes with many folks that you'd be surprised to see there who understand that needs to happen. And so I think we're excited in the Senate. I've visited also with Chairman Martinez in the House. You know, we'll have to see what the governor's willing to do. Obviously, it's an election year for her. And so that's always got to keep that in the mix. So all these are in play, but I really do think we need to have recurring, steady revenue. And we can't do that through oil and gas. We passed just one final thing. In 2017, my first year as majority leader, we passed a $340 million tax package that the governor, that's the famous veto where she eliminated the legislature and eliminated higher ed and constitutional challenges. And that was with a much more conservative Senate. It passed with 34 votes in favor. So there may be some Republicans that are also willing to look at many of these things. So this is important, and it needs to be part of the discussion.
Great. And I see that Bill Jordan is on the Zoom, and I'm sure he's grinning from ear to ear with your news about the corporation committee going on.
But hang on though. But maybe Roxanne and Paul, you may be in trouble now, because I don't think Bill Jordan lives in Senate District 25, and that's how this was represented. So Bill, you better fess up here, man. Or you slid the Zoom link.
Well, we did tell people that because you're Senate leader, that, you know, everyone is your constituent.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And glad of it. So Miranda Viscoli is on, and I'm going to allow her to talk. And that doesn't look like Miranda,
No.
but
Cute
Miranda,
though.
you have a question about.
Is my dog up there? Sorry about that. Yes. So, Senator Wirth, thank you for your sage and courageous leadership on many issues, but especially on gun violence prevention. You and I have been walking down this path a long time, and he has moved mountains to get things passed in this state. A few quick things. So in terms of our next session, we are looking at 3 bills that Giffords Law Center and New Mexican Institute to Prevent Gun Violence are working on together. And one, and the most important one, and it's so easy, but actually this one is, I swear, would be a ERPO amendment. So we passed the ERPO bill thanks to Senator Cervantes for his hard work. He is also my hero, and Representative Joy Garrett and Representative Damon Eli. But unfortunately, in the sausage making process, there are problems in that bill. So to date, not one ERPO has been filed because there are some tweaks we need to make. They're simple. I do think sadly, when you look at COVID and suicide, ERPO will save lives. And so we're hoping that we can get these moved quickly through the committees to make it so that we can have a law that actually works. In addition to that, we've been working with the violent intervention folks at APD, VIP, and they have a violence intervention fund, and everybody goes, where's the money? Well, I actually believe that if we passed a bill on a law on getting a violence intervention fund, that would include a statewide firearm injury review panel, as well as data-driven programs that reduce gun violence in areas that are adversely affected to gun violence, going back to what Roxanne was bringing up about prisons and contracts. This would actually help us in reducing gun violence. So there's that. And then also, and I know it's a hard lift, and you and I have talked about it, but ending open carry in our state buildings, especially with what we're seeing in the past week. And I know that's not easy, believe me, but those are the 3 bills we are looking at. So just want to throw that out there and see what you have to think, what you have to say about that.
Yeah, I first want to say thank you, Miranda Viscoli, for what you've done and your advocacy. And you're right, we've been on a journey on this, and I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, and what you've had to deal with, and kind of your passion and how hard it's been to get to where we are. And just again, so everyone understands, and it's you do this long enough, and you really can kind of feel the sea change. And when I first was in the legislature, every single year, the NRA had another bill that they threw forward. And in 2009, I think the final straw was guns in restaurants. And I was in Senate Judiciary when that bill came out of Senate Judiciary, and it was a very long night, and there was a fight over another bill, and a bunch of members left, and all of a sudden the votes were wrong, and the bill got called, and that was it. It passed. And since then, we had this huge period where we kind of had nothing happening. And then thanks to Miranda and many other advocates, we've begun to move the other direction. And, the background check bill, which I carried with Senator Martinez, which passed with 22 votes, and likewise the ERPO bill, those were very, very challenging pieces of legislation. And Senator Cervantes does need a ton of credit on that for what he was able to do. So again, I think it's a whole new landscape. And so it's not going to be me holding my breath and kind of, doing amendments and trying to shape, and all of us working to get to just enough that we can get the votes to get over the line. I feel like this caucus is going to want to really push on this issue like many other issues. And so I'm confident about that. We've talked a little about the last issue, and we can continue to talk a little bit, more about that offline. I do think the concept of the discussion about gun safety needs to happen and continue to happen here, which it is. And, maybe there can begin to be some sense of sanity at the federal level on this issue as well. So again, haven't seen all the bills, seen all the details, but I assume you've got Senator Cervantes and Representative Garrett working on those amendments, and just let me know. We'll figure out where they are and how it's going to work. And we are going to have, less floor time this session. That's the thing about it. There's just going to be windows of floor time, and then we're going to be virtual, so it'll be different. But we take it one day at a time with the virus, and really hoping that come the end of this session, we're in a place to be able to run a bunch of these bills, because it is what the voters spoke and very clearly. And we have these 7 amazing new Democrats in our chamber, and we have a caucus that wants to really push. And so I'm excited to lead that.
So I wanted to follow up on that, because we had a Zoom conversation with Speaker Egolf this afternoon. And one of the things he said about the open carry bill was that he didn't know if this was the session to do that, because it could trigger a whole lot of reaction from the very people we want to kind of disarm, if you will. And having been someone who's had to go into the roundhouse when there have been all the protest, First Amendment, Second Amendment protesters out surrounding the roundhouse and in guns, and that was before that now. So it seems like this maybe isn't the time to back down either. I mean, the atmosphere might be ripe for getting this done. What do you think?
Well, let me just tell you, so when we did the background check bill, which was scary in itself, that same year there was discussion about doing ERPO before we got across the line. And I'll just let everyone know, I mean, we've had a Capitol that is heralded for its openness, which has included not only people marching around the outside of the Capitol, but there are armed folks sitting in committee rooms. I mean, it's just outrageous what's going on. And I've carried little, rule changes and things to have that discussion. But 2019, Senator Payne, Republican, who I went to law school with, good friend, he and I sit together on the Senate Judiciary Committee, and one of his constituents who was in the audience for the ERPO, that's the one they were really worried about, had a gun, looked extremely unstable. I mean, it's frightening. And maybe finally people realized after what we saw last Wednesday, this is not acceptable. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And, it's taking away from everyone else's constitutional rights to participate in their democratic government when people are so scared they won't come into a committee room. So we need to continue to have the discussion. We're going to be smart about how we do this. Look, there's no question that all of this, I mean, I kind of think it's a different type of virus. We were dealing with one virus before, and now after what we saw, it's just outrageous. And again, I think unfortunately the Capitol will never be the same, is my feeling after this. I really, guns inside, I don't see how that can happen. Whether there's not even a metal detector, coming in the door. That's just the way it's been. And again, it was celebrated, and it's just really sad that we're at this place. But that's what happens when things are pushed at this level. So I'm not sure exactly where I am, Paul. In terms of it is a scary time, and we need to be very smart. And you're going to see a security presence unlike anything that's ever been at the Capitol before. I mean, I'll visit with the speaker about it, and we'll strategize about it. But I also think that I don't want to be intimidated. I mean, there's a constitutional responsibility we have. We signed up for this. We're going to do everything we can to be safe about it. But the people have spoken. This is our government, and these are issues that are darn important to all of us. And so, again, we take it one day at a time.
Thank you. Yeah, okay, we're going to try to get to at least a few of the questions that people have posted in the Q&A. And just for those of you who weren't here at the very beginning, the senator has told us that he has to leave right at 6, so we can't go over. And I think maybe if you want to just try to give us quick answers, if that's possible. The first one is from Jade Gordon, and she's asking if there's going to be a time limitation rule on the floor debates.
So we don't have a time limitation rule in the Senate. We never have. There is a 2-hour rule per member, but you also saw the famous Senator Chair filibuster. You know, and that and again, we haven't had many of those. I mean, you see the difference between the two chambers. I think what's important to me, and I've had this discussion with the Republicans, is everyone realizes, you know, this is the time to try and keep the temperature down in our chamber to the extent we can. There's going to be big, passionate debates, but I don't think we're going to change the rules to limit debate. I think that has its own, that actually can trigger an even worse response in terms of time.
Okay.
Okay, well, let me summarize that.
You go ahead.
Oh, okay. This one is from Mark Calderwood. He's asking about, it looks like a bill from last year, HB 269, an act related to domestic terrorism that was introduced by Hockman, Vigil, Figueroa, Gallegos, and Rem. Passed the House, but it was too late to make it to the Senate. Would you support that kind of bill, and what kind of roadblocks might prevent it from passing?
Yeah, I may have voted for it. I can't remember if it went through the Senate Judiciary Committee. I just don't remember the specifics on it. So I don't, you know, is it creating more penalties for domestic terrorism? I just don't remember.
Yeah,
Okay. All right. Yeah, we don't really know much about it. Okay. Go ahead, Paul.
Okay. My understanding is that
Wait, who is it?
Oh, this is from Jeff Selesky, and he's a active member within Retake. And his question was that it is his understanding that a state bank only handles public funds, tax revenues and so forth, and funds that are deposited that are the state's money, not individual depositors. So how would this be a threat to community banks?
Well, and Melissa has been working on this issue too. So I think the question is important, because I think it really depends on how this is structured, and if it's money that's being invested in Wells Fargo, which is I think what we were trying to do all those years, is get it out of these big multinational banks and pulled in. So I think it's a great question. And I think this is what's important about how this bill gets shaped and defined, so that it really is made clear to the community banks that it's not going to threaten them. It's basically taking a pool of money that's leaving the state otherwise and putting it towards a targeted use and investment. So I think the question is spot on. I'm trying to think if I've been even in a committee that's ever heard this bill. I'm not sure I have. So again, but I think the question is good.
Okay. Here's one from Steffi Weisberg. Rural New Mexicans are very concerned about broadband and water. Are there going to be any significant water bills this year? And we know that Stansbury was planning to do one, but that is not happening. Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah.
And there's one from Roger Montoya that I talked to him about that yesterday. He's going to be on our radio show on Saturday. Do you know anything about it? Anything
I
percolating?
don't know about Roger. I did hear something about an Andrea Romero bill that would require an analysis of climate change, which is something that's been an issue in an application with the state engineer. So that's an important thing. I want to flag for all of you something that we were able to do that we will hope it's a funding issue, but there's a fouling program on the lower Rio Grande that's absolutely critical as part of the overall Texas v. New Mexico settlement. And one of the things, and you get me going on water, though, I'm going to hit my time limit. I don't know if I can do it super quick. I just think we need to figure out a way that we give the farmers the ability to tax themselves to fallow land that's not productive. Just because it's got the priority water right, it may not be the most productive land. And in San Luis Valley up in Colorado, they did this. They went to the legislature and they were able to do this fallowing program that we were able to start, that you might, it was in the New Mexican, is the first step in that. And I can't stress enough when it comes to water, how important Texas v. New Mexico is, and getting that case resolved, because that has got some frightening consequences if we lose in terms of water and money. So that's a big one. So I think I'm jumping around. What was the other? It was water and
Infrastructure like telecommunications.
Yeah.
broadband. There's going to be a huge push for broadband. Let me just say, there's $400 million in the December federal stimulus money going directly to the public schools, which is incredibly important because that can be used for broadband, which we need for Martinez Yazzie as part of the solution there. Senator Padilla has a big package of broadband bills. The other thing we're going to try and do is a COVID relief package in the first couple of weeks of the session. And with all these reserves, we have 35% reserves, non-recurring money. Let's pump it. Broadband has to happen. It really is it's like LBJ's rural electrification when he strung lines. That's where we are. And we've just jumped 10 years ahead, in the need for that, given obviously education and all of the businesses that want to work remote. I mean, look, we've got lots of people coming now to New Mexico for the first time in a while because they realize they can work and run their business here just like we're doing on Zoom. But you can't do it if you don't have broadband. So it is a big, big priority.
Well, it's 6 o'clock, so we got to let you go. But I really, really, really want to thank you, Senator Wirth. It's always refreshing to talk with you, and your candor, and just you're a good man, Senator Wirth. You're a good man.
Well, you guys are nice. You're nice to say that, and thank you for everything you're doing. And just know, it really makes a difference. I used to say we had the most open Capitol in the country. Just come right in and get to work. But now you really got to work to make it happen, and you're doing that. And so, and I hear from all my colleagues, because you guys are reaching out across the state, and not just urban, but just all the different Democrats to have these kinds of conversations. So thanks everyone, appreciate it, and stay tuned, stay in touch, and keep pushing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care.
I just want to tell our participants that if we got to almost all the questions, there are just 2 left. And so Senator Wirth said you're free to email him and ask any questions that you didn't get answered tonight.
Oh, no, we didn't.
So
Thanks a lot, everybody.
thank you very much. Thank you to all the others who asked questions tonight. And we'll see you on the next Zoom.
All right, take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.